How do we do? How do we do? How do we do? You doing? All right. Okay. Here we go. Hey, welcome to the court of the Edijester. Only got a few days. Come and join us as warrior teachers. We're starting the third Thursday of this month. I'm very excited to meet all the new peeps. Buy me a coffee, usual stuff, right? So what have we got here? Well, there's an important case coming up about a gentleman who I've spoken to, I know, called Kevin Lister, who's been treated quite abominably by a number of people. So there's an article in the Tory Graph today that it's worth us trying to grasp. The evil trans ideology is in retreat at last. That's the title of the article, and it's written by Alison Pearson on the 15th of March 2024. One landmark victory has been won. We must now end the indoctrination of innocent children in our schools. Absolutely right, Alison. Get this look-a-bit-cute nonsense out and gone, along with gender identity, ideology, critical race theory, and all its vapid, ridiculous, anti-human, anti-enlightenment offshoots. It's a bit of a mini rant there, on my part. Sheena's son, Alison begins, is about to be physically castrated. Not exactly the Mother's Day gift she would have liked. It's absolutely devastating, but Sheena and other parents of young people who claim their brains and bodies don't align are starting to fight back against this monstrous, self-elected maiming of their boys and girls. The mums and dads think their kids have been indoctrinated by trans activists who, quite unbelievably, have been allowed to preach their controversial views to innocent children in our schools. They're preaching it to everyone in businesses and organisations, but this focus here is obviously on schools, which is what Kevin is fighting for. In December, the government finally published its gender questioning children guidance. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan claimed this guidance puts the best interests of all children first, removing any confusion about the protections that must be in place for biological sex and single-sex spaces. The parents of kids who, out of the blue, had announced they were trans thought this response was wholly inadequate. They knew guidance still gave schools wiggle room to allow a child to socially transition, changing his or her birth name, demanding pronoun different to his or her biological sex, and socially transitioning is not a harmless act. We know it's iatrogenic, which means it is the harm. As Dr. Cass pointed out in her interim 2022 review into gender identity services, very often it is the first step on the pathway to gender reassignment, which includes, and I still find this almost too upsetting to write down, deluded girls having double mastectomies and losing sexual function before they've ever had an orgasm. Most children grow out of gender dysphoria. Just to interrupt there, we need to stop calling it that. It's trans ideation. There is no gender dysphoria. It's body dysmorphia. Even that's a push. It's social contagion. It's delusion. Mental illness. It is not gender dysphoria. There's no such thing. That was a made-up term in order to garner insurance companies' monies so these men could get their fake breasts. We've got to stop using it. It's trans ideation. So on Friday, a group of claimants will apply to the High Court for a judicial review, which will claim that Mrs. Keegan and the Department of Education are, in effect, sending a message to schools that they can break the law with their soft stance. The unlawful political indoctrination of children in gender identity ideology is now commonplace in schools and colleges, one of the witnesses claims. Over the last few years, the country has witnessed a surge in children who express dissatisfaction with their birth sex and choose to identify as trans or non-binary. Trans and non-binary are taught in relationship, sex and health education as cool identities which must be embraced and celebrated at any cost. Still going on. Still going on. We need this case. We need this judicial review. However, the cost, both mental and physical, and I would add to that, spiritual and intellectual. Okay, I would add to that. Of telling children they might have been born in the wrong body, where's the other one, and they need to transition to feel like their authentic self. This is the language of the cult, and it's interesting. Now I'm back on LinkedIn because they're all rattling on about it. British Airways and authentic self and own truth. They've absolutely fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker. We've got so much work to do to get this gone. Wrong body, and they need to transition to feel like their authentic self. is never mentioned, making it more akin to propaganda than education, which is what it is. It is propaganda. And as the claimants sternly point out, political indoctrination of children in local authority-maintained schools is unlawful under the Equality Act. Sorry, the Education Act, 1996. Claimants in the case who are supported by the Bad Law Project include distraught parents like Sheena who say they have witnessed indoctrination of their own children, but their complaints to school were ignored. Also featuring prominently is Kevin Lister, who was sacked after 20 years as a terrific maths teacher for transphobia. Another thing that doesn't exist. That was the terrible bigoted offence I had committed that ended my life's vocation, asked Lister. What was the terrible bigoted offence I had committed that ended my life's vocation, asked Lister. I dared to challenge whether my colleagues and I should be affirming a 17-year-old female student's assertion that she was a boy. Well, my answer is no, you shouldn't. You should tell her, go home. You're not well, love. Then you call social services. He wanted to speak to the parents first. That's what he said. That's what Kevin said. I want to speak to the parents first. For failing to do as the student demanded and call her by a boy's name, Kevin was escorted off the premises with immediate effect. Cult. Absolute cult. If that sounds like some nightmarish episode out of a dystopian fiction, that could be because our education system has been cunningly infiltrated by third-party providers of gender ideology, paid for out of taxpayers' money, who behave as if it's biological sex, which is the crazy, unscientific idea. It's schools, absolutely vital. This case, Kevin here, this is about schools, so it's vital we understand that, but that's exactly what's happened to corporations and businesses. They've been infiltrated by lunatics. One landmark victory in this bitter culture war has already been won this week. NHS England announced that children will no longer be routinely prescribed puberty blockers following referral from gender identity clinics. Former PM Liz Truss seeks to go further in her private member's bill on Friday, that's today, strange enough, is when I'm filming this, which would prevent the drugs being sold via private prescription and also turn woolly government guidance into law. Apparently, there was not enough evidence puberty blockers are safe or effective. It's hard to overstate how infamous that admission is, nor to anticipate with what slack-jawed horror history will regard us. Our society knowingly allowed thousands of children to take drugs that prevented the development of penis and testes in boys and of breasts and menstruation in girls without being certain of long-term consequences. There is mounting evidence that hormone blockers may have knocked a few points off the youngsters' IQ. It's experimentation, it's medical experimentation on children. And there are teachers that are telling them it's okay. There are teachers that are affirming them. There are teachers that are pretending they understand this. They don't. They don't. But most aren't malicious, remember that. Hannon's razor. Hannon's razor. Yeah, that applies. But also we have to be very cognizant of the fact that this is going on elsewhere. Businesses have fallen for it. There's loads of these DEI, EDI consultants running around pretending they know what they're talking about. Look at that woman that was on that video that I put out about it, like CIPD. She's like, denying it was her altogether. I know different. Anyway, it's grim stuff, but goodness me. Good luck, Kevin. I hope it all comes out all right for you. And let's see an end to these vicious anti-human and anti-enlightenment belief systems. Time has come for it to end. I'll see you later.